I've never read the book that this is based on, but I was out there and I saw the book, and it's a pretty thick book. So
it's a big book.
Can you tell me about having to adapt that? Is it generally what's in the book? Do we see on screen, or did you have to cut a lot?
No, I had to cut a lot. Yeah, unfortunately. It was 350 pages, and I had to shoehorn it into about 100. But I saw a path as I was reading it, because I had read this, well, actually, the way the book came to me, true story, is I got an email in my inbox from a robot at Amazon.com. And they said, if you like this zombie fiction book that you had read, you're going to love this John Dies at the End. And I read the log line, and it had the whole little storyline in there. And I was going, this sounds like it would be a great movie. So as I was reading the book, when I finally got it, I was hoping that it would stay together. I was almost cheerleading as I was reading it. And then it gets to this right or left turn it takes, and it goes into this strange, unfilmable section. But then it resolved itself back, and I could see a path where you could take the first third and the last chunk and fuse it together. And that's what I did, and I think it pretty much holds together. But the cool part about it is that for people who really enjoy this world, they can go read the book, and there's a lot more, a lot of really good stuff.
I'm definitely taking one on the way out.
You should check it out, for sure.
So, did you ever talk to David about how he came up with some of this stuff? Because, like, it's one thing to come up with one really cool original idea, but this movie is just packed with, like, crazy plot points, like, props, costumes, characters, everything. Like, does this all just naturally come to him?
It does. I think he is a demented visionary. Seriously, the guy is so gifted, and his dialogue, and yet you can see it on a daily basis, you know, because his day job is he's senior editor at this humor site, crack.com, and some of the writing that he has on that site is so brilliant. And you know, look, maybe it's just me, but I think that the guy could make all kinds of other media, film projects, TV, whatever, because he just has a very interesting, compelling take on the world.
This kind of world, too, feels like ripe for expansion. Like, watching this movie, I think it could really suit television format and a series that you could live in for a long time.
That seems like something that could do. It's something that we've talked about a little bit, because Paul has a production company, and they just made an arrangement at FX Network to do some original programming. So we talked to him a little bit about that, but it's a little tricky because, you know, obviously the movie needs to come out and establish itself, and hopefully there'll be like-minded souls like yourself who would have the same feeling. And but then again, you know, maybe the work is a little too wild for not for the audience, but maybe for the executives. You know, I don't know.
But then look at what they're doing with American Horror Story.
Okay, well that's some really
this
awesome
could slide in really nice right next to it.
That's a good point. Now that I think of it, and that was at FX, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, you sold me.
And it's getting pretty crazy.
Yeah. I haven't watched this season at all, but I watched all last season. It was awesome, and I can't wait to get to this one.
So I'm sure you have great ideas too, even though this book is filled with it. So did you get to throw any of your own stuff in here?
Well, I was forced to try to figure out a plot device to wrap the thing up, and so better or worse, I was responsible for the whole Marconi bomb dog arc there, which was I think it fit in okay, and from time to time there were some other little moments that I did, but I tried to stay as faithful to that book as possible, because it was just so many great moments in it. And I figure if as long as I take the effort to take somebody's novel and make it, then I try to stay as true to it as possible.
And now what happens when you turn your producer brain on and approach it that way? Because you're responsible for taking the source material and doing it justice, but you're also responsible for actually making this thing happen with whatever money you have. So when you're writing, do you ever look at something and say to yourself, this might suck too much of the budget away, even though it's good, we can't do it?
Well, I hate to say it, I'm always like that because I have to be totally practical at all times because, you know, I made those kind of mistakes on my very first movie where, you know, I thought I could do things and it just didn't happen and it was, you know, disaster ensued. So now I have to tell you that the interesting point is that the last two movies I made, both Bubba Hotep and John Dies at the End, when I first looked at those books that they were based on, there was a certain level of simplicity because some of the best scenes in both, and in John too, really weren't the elaborate effects things, but some of it were just the hilarious dialogue between the two characters. I mean, you're having a guy talking on a Broadway cell phone to another guy. Pretty simple to shoot, really, but some of the best stuff. So I was, you know, one of the big selling points about the book was that I could see that those types of scenes could be easy. So we could whip through those and then focus our resources on making a monster out of freezer meats.
And how about just for you as a director, what is more difficult, you know, striking the right tone in a one-on-one conversation or a bratwurst person conversation, or the more visual effects heavy material?
Well, they all have their challenges, but I will tell you that just achieving the overall tone is one of the just most difficult moments, trying to decide whether an actor is overplaying the lines, whether they're underplaying it, you know, whether the whole movie's going off the rails here. I mean, in case in point, there's a key plot moment where our hero Dave is saved by his dog, okay? And then there's a dialogue scene with his dog, where his dog is talking to him. And it was like, at that point, when I was filming it, I'm thinking, there's just no way to make this work. And I did a lot of tricks in editing, and I think that made it, I think, palatable to the audience. And then it was really gratifying that when I saw the movie with an audience, they seemed to appreciate it. But there were a lot of different times in the movie where, you know, you're dealing with some really out there stuff. You just don't want to completely go off the rails. And I think we stayed on pretty much.
So how about casting those actors? Like, you bring them in and audition them, what do you have them do? Like, are you having him talk to a hot dog and seeing how he does it?
Oh, yeah, sure, of course, yeah. The casting process, well, first off, the design of the book was great. From the get-go, I could see where, even on a modest budget, as long as we could get two young guys who we could get for relatively cheaply, that we could sprinkle throughout some veteran character actors and wonderful talents. And so that worked out beautifully because we were able to bring guys like Paul Giamatti, bring in Glenn Turman, he won an Emmy for In Treatment, just a great actor. I love his work. Clancy Brown, I've been a fan of his for many, many years. And Doug Jones, who does all the Guillermo del Toro movies. They're all wonderful actors. So we've got that backstop of those guys. Like, you know, every 5 minutes, one of those guys comes into the scene. But there was this challenge of finding these two guys, and they just came in and they just read that we're so lucky with Chase Williamson, who plays Dave. He had just graduated from the University of Southern California Drama School, and it was like his second audition. He came in to read for John Dies at the End. And he'd never been in a movie or in a TV show. But as you asked, what I did is one of the important things that I did with him is I sat him down and had him read Dave's narration, which kind of carries us through the movie. And as I was listening to him narrate the film, it was like I was there, you know, because keep in mind that as the director, you really are the first audience. And so this was the moment I'm listening to him doing this narration, I'm thinking, this movie could really be good. This guy's great, and I feel it like coming to life. And so he was a lot. The big challenge for that, though, unfortunately, is due to Paul's schedule. Our first day of shooting, Chase has to show up and do 8 pages of dialogue with Paul Giamatti. First time ever in front of a movie camera. And so the fact that he pulled that off, and I think some of his best scenes in the movie, it was really like all downhill from there in terms of ease. Then Rob Mays, who plays John, just has this happy-go-lucky attitude about him, and just a really sweet, genuinely nice guy. And you could see that you know, the way he read, that he could make that work. And then I brought the two of them together, and they played really well. So I felt pretty comfortable.
Can you tell me about that scene where he's sitting down and talking to Arnie in the restaurant? Because one thing I found surprising, but I kind of liked it at the same time, was how the opening scene, like you could have just jumped right into that portion of it, but you have this almost like nice little thing that almost feels like its own short and kind of introduces you to the world. Was that done purposely?
You mean in terms of, we had the first bit and then we did the flashback to the meat monster sequence?
Yeah.
Actually, that was decided at the very end, because there was an interesting structure to the novel that I never because it started in the present, then it jumped back to the past, then it jumped back to the not so past. It was a bit confusing. For a novel, it worked great, but for the movie, it was throwing people. It really came down to the last minute, because Paul Giamatti and his partner Dan Carey were also executive producers on the movie, and they came out to watch a cut of the movie, and after I showed them the film, the one comment that they had was that we still had that issue where the structure wasn't working at the beginning, and at that moment, then I came up with this idea of where we would start and then tell it in a little flashback and then come back, and I think it solved the issue.
And the axe part too?
No, the axe was always the beginning.
It was. Is that the beginning in the book also?
Yes. Oh yeah, that always started the movie. Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Can you tell me about the movie magic behind like the meat monster and other elements like that? Did you have any like crazy tricks that you pulled out that maybe other people wouldn't think of?
Well, the assembly of the meat monster was all done with a lot of fishing line. We spent 3 days on the floor of that basement, 2 or 3 puppeteers, pulling around pieces of meat, flying around and coming together. And then a lot of times you wouldn't even see the monofilament. We go back, and the ones we did, we digitally remove it. And we did it very old school, because we had this, early on, I was able to understand that we could do it as a man in a suit, the monster. So we, this beautifully designed costume by Robert Kurtzman, who used to be one of the partners in the KMB Effects Company, which is a very world-famous effects company. And they built this, it's almost a work of art, this meat monster costume. And I mean, it's got detail that not all of it shows up on the screen. You can see this, he's worked some fish into it, but he's also got like a pack of wieners up here. The guy's left hand is an entire baked ham with a pineapple on it. It's just a hilarious piece of artistry.
Tell me you kept it.
Oh yeah, and there are plans to reproduce it and sell it to haunted houses. So we got something to look forward to in October.
You could have the hottest new Halloween costume though for 2013.
For the meat monster. Yes, he would be great. But so it's also a function. Look, all these different things are tools. You got your digital effects and you got your old school rubber effects. I tend to lean more towards the rubber, because then the actors have something they can actually work off of.
And now to wrap up, highly stylized world here, a lot to digest. Is there anything that you would tell someone who might be skeptical that's about to go see it? Like one thing that you could tell them before to prepare themselves for what they're about to experience?
Well, a lot of folks think that they should go see it impaired under certain substances. I think it's a movie. It takes a little bit of concentration, but look, it's a wild ride. And I like to think it holds up to repeated viewings, so probably not a bad idea to check it out a second time after you've watched it.